actually do broadcast. Okay, hold on. This is live. You are on.
Whoop, whoop.
There we go.
You show up yet?
Oh, there's my thinning hair. Great.
Hey, how come I can't? Oh, there it is.
Oh, there we are.
Okay.
And share.
Smokin Toastin.
Did I share? I thought I shared. Share now. Probably just shared it twice. Hi, everybody that I just shared twice to.
It's okay. They weren't on yet.
So I shared it as Smokin
just
Toastin.
FYI, we run Facebook Live the entire time, so in between segments and everything, we'll be on Facebook Live.
So don't say anything terrible.
No,
Got
say
it.
everything.
Say everything
Like,
terrible.
get drunk and say everything.
Perfect.
That's the way I like my guests.
That'll make my afternoon appointments go well.
Like, we're not embarrassed. We're trying to show you off.
Yeah. Are the mics on?
Was that
Let me know when we're ready, chillins.
Is this thing on?
Oh boy.
That's
We are good. Who's running? Somebody running a
that is
timer?
totally
Okay, cool.
that is totally the title of my
ready.
autobiography. Is this thing on?
What's in that little box, Chris?
Mine's going to be, that's not how I do it.
Yeah.
That anniversary single.
Yeah, come on over.
Mine's gonna be, swear to God, I thought she was 18.
Commercial release
So, gentlemen, this is the
for
Wow.
sort of, but bunch of actual single barrels. 8 rows. The only
You
one
are
works.
insane.
That
looks
is
amazing.
madness.
Oh,
Fried egg
wow.
on it, man. That's the way to do
man.
anything. Fried eggs on everything.
All right, Facebook Live. Pay attention.
Is that pork belly? Oh, that's poutine.
Yeah.
That's poutine. Wasn't that a Ted Nugent song? Wang Dang Sweet Poutine?
Yeah.
That's something else, man.
Awesome.
We like to say, put in the poutine, man.
Oh yeah. That's what she said.
Glad I got the mic.
Who's here like,
Matt's is just a dummy mic.
Let's
It's like your
let's
little brother. You give him the remote that doesn't work.
do a show, guys. Ready?
Oh,
All
yeah,
right, here we
sorry.
go.
Well, good. Some of this is too good to let go.
All right, everybody, look professional. Now,
Okay, wait. We're gonna need a few minutes.
on three.
We're gonna need a few minutes.
Professional.
Here we go. Ready? 3, 2, and what was that other number?
At 4.
Okay. Well. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 64 of Smokin Toastin. This is the radio program that is all about craft beer, fine spirits, and hand-rolled cigars. My name is Cruz. My partner in crime is Ian Barry, and welcome to the program, my man.
How are you doing this week?
It's so nice to see you.
Look how lovely we're doing today. All the whiskey's on the table. This is going to be
believe
wonderful.
me, we're gonna get to all of this, and it's going to be
It's going to take half a
gonna be
segment
incredible.
just to say what we have.
Yes,
here.
yes, it is, and it's going to take even more than half a segment to taste it all. But boy, am I looking forward to it. This is show number 64. It's Smokin and Toastin. We are live today from Bosscat Kitchen. We're at 4310 Westheimer in Houston. We are not just live from Bosscat, but we are live from the Whiskey Room in Bosscat. And this is an impressive
Now, if
room.
you're watching on Facebook Live, you can see one corner of one wall.
Yes. That wall goes all the way around the
This
room.
wall goes all the way around the room. Yes.
I was going to tell them,
pretty amazing.
apparently somebody's setting up for a party in here later, and they have these large inflatable balloons,
Giant
one of
balloons.
which is blocking an entire wall of whiskey. And I told them earlier, I said, balloons are nice and all, but know your audience. I don't want to see the balloon. I want to see the whiskey. So we're really thrilled to be here. Matt from Bosscat Kitchen is here. He'll be joining us, telling us a bit about this whiskey room, how it came to be, how they stock it, what their thought process is. But he's only one of, not to throw any shade at Matt, but he's only one of our guests today because we also have Frank from Beam Suntory here. And Frank has been on the program before, but this time he brought way more stuff. That's the only way I can sort of explain it.
I mean, if this sets the bar, then we're just going to have to keep raising it.
Well, yeah. So, and speaking of setting the bar, because we knew we'd be doing a very whiskey-oriented show, we invited our best whiskey friends in the world, Kris, Hart, and Yawante Curry, are back on the program, and so look, it's like we're getting the band back together.
That's right.
I really
It's a
love
family
this,
affair.
guys.
Thanks for having
Welcome
us.
back.
Thanks for having us here. I'm just glad to hear that we're your favorites.
Yes, absolutely, you are.
In your face, Wingo.
Yeah. By the way, just so we're clear, we told him when he was on the show that he was our favorite.
Well,
you guys understand, right?
yeah.
I'm keeping tabs as to how many times he's on the show versus how many times we're on the show, but so far
Okay,
we're
good.
winning.
Okay, good. Now they're bringing in some great food from Bosscat and setting it all up, including something with a big fried egg on it. I don't know how we're going to eat any of this stuff, but maybe that'll be extra entertaining for the Facebook Live between the breaks.
Yeah, they get to
stuff.
watch us between the breaks. That's
Yeah.
going to be fun.
The aroma that matters.
Yeah,
Little
absolutely.
sense of
Absolutely.
smell.
So it's been a crazy week. I think we always say that, but it seems like it's been so busy. Now, we had a couple of those 2-show weeks, Ian. This
We
was
did.
a 1-show week, so it feels like I haven't seen you in forever. Is everything all right?
So far as I can tell, I mean,
Yeah?
no one's told me any different today.
Okay. Good to
So
know.
I think I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. I was wondering if you'd smoked anything interesting
I
lately.
did, actually. I did. I went back to my Blackworks. I have this corner of my humidor that has a lot of the Blackworks and Black Label company cigars, which I got a bunch of, and I didn't want to review them all like
Like, sure, every week
subsequent
sequentially,
show.
sure.
So I spaced them out a little bit. So I tried out their Syndustry last time. This time I tried out the Killer Bee,
Now,
which
I
is a
have heard about this
Lonsdale
cigar. Yes,
It's fantastic.
really. Tell
Oh
me
yeah, I
about it.
smoked it down to nothing. Not knowing all the particulars on this particular cigar I smoked it, I'll tell you what my experience was. It started off, had a little bit of spice on it, immediately smoothed out. It's a full flavored cigar all the way down. It's very, very, very intense, but not so strong that it's unpleasant. It's just a big, giant, full flavor. This thing smoked perfectly. It's a Lonsdale, so it's like 7 inches long. It smoked perfectly till it was just about burning my fingers. I think these go somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 to $12. I'm going to give it a 7 right off. The
Oh
bat.
wow, dude, that's a big
Spicy,
score.
Wonderful, like the mocha flavors were real big. A little bit of like white pepper spice on the back lingers. It was just a fantastic smoke.
So I just want to back up because you are not one to hand out the big numbers just willy nilly.
No, I'm a little stingy with it.
Yeah. So right off the bat, you're giving this a 7.
Right off the bat, I'm giving it a 7. And I'm
So
pretty
this-
sure that's what I gave that Syndustry as well.
So let's make sure everyone remembers that the price to quality index, which I've figured out by the way that if we add the word index to it, it sounds more like we know what we're doing.
That's pretty sweet.
So I think let's now refer to it as the price to quality index.
Okay.
People may write about it and stuff.
There you go.
But the price to quality index, if you will, like a 5 is a good score. It means you got what you paid for. If you give something a 6, it means you got more than what you paid
That's
for.
right.
If you give something a 7, you're starting to rave about it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean this is something where if I paid double what I paid, I would have been quite happy with it.
Wow, that's a
Yeah,
that's a
it's
huge endorsement.
Just a great cigar.
That's
you
a
could
huge
apply this.
endorsement.
You could apply this this
price
scale,
to quality index.
or you could apply this index to almost anything you're having. But yeah, right at 5, you're getting what you paid for. I call it a 7 easily on that.
and we'll refer to it as the price to quality index or the PTQI.
I love that.
PTQI.
PTQI.
PTQI
Doesn't
from now
that sound?
on.
Yeah, that sounds very Office Space somehow. I think.
I was thinking CBS reports.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, how about you? What did you smoke?
I had a great one this week. I smoked the Rocky Patel Decade Robusto, and it is a beautiful box pressed Robusto. I noticed when I was looking up.
That's old school.
I was looking up some information on the cigar on the internet to make sure that I had my tobaccos right, where the origin of the country of tobacco, and noticed that this cigar may have come out in a non-box pressed version initially. Because it looked like I saw some Robustas online that were not box pressed, or at least not as severely. This one was box pressed, like it was a square. It literally was a square. So my stepson Aaron's birthday was last week. The whole family went out to Candelari's. We had pizza and drinks and watched the Astros win. And then we headed over to FM Kitchen and Bar on Shepherd in Houston to watch Nick Greer and the G's play live. And it was an outdoor show. Weather was beautiful. They had Lone Pint Yellow Rose on tap. I mean, what more do you want?
This is like your recipe for a wonderful night. isn't it?
Absolutely. So I pulled this baby out of my pocket and lit up this gorgeous little Robusto. Ecuadorian Sumatra wrapper, Honduran binder, Nicaraguan filler, and I'd been basically... So I took the cellophane off of it a while back. It had been in the humidor without the cellophane. So this had been in my shirt pocket like the whole evening, and I kept sort of sneaking it out of my pocket and just enjoying the aroma. Yeah, I've been enjoying it all night. Rich earth and leather. And then once I punched the head and lit the foot, we were off to the races. It started out medium-bodied and creamy, but had a very flavorful finish to it, even right from the beginning. No harshness. You know how some cigars are kind of harsh for that first, half of an inch or so? None of that. It was just absolutely smooth and complex and interesting from the very beginning. There were notes of wood and leather, some spice, some nuttiness. It got a little fuller as it smoked overall, though I'd say medium-bodied. And I smoked it also down to the nub. Finished it up just as the show ended. This is about a $10 cigar, which is somewhat pricey for a Robusto, but you can find it a lot cheaper than that, which I actually did with this one. I got it in a 5-pack, and I think it was closer to probably $7.50 or $8. So at $10, the PTQI, price to quality index.
That was quick. You did that well.
I'd give it a solid 6. Solid 6 at $10. Maybe even a 7 if you could get it for $7 or $8. Now, Kris, I told you that I was reviewing this cigar before the show started, and you said you had some thoughts on it.
So, and just to remind me, this is the decades or the
yes, the Rocky Patel Decade Robusto.
I had mentioned this before at the beginning of the show. I had got into cigars when I first found my love for cigars. It was at a cigar shop in Humble. What's the correct? Humble?
Either way.
If you're from Texas, you don't pronounce the H.
Correct.
Yeah. I'm feeling humble and humble.
Correct.
Nice.
Anyways, I fell in love with them with the vintage 1990 and the 1992,
Yes.
and then going from there, I did the Old World Reserve, and then you get over the decades. I think it's a very great quality stick, and really, to me, if it's got a solid draw, it's got a decent burn, and it's under $10, you can't price to quality index. It's hard not to hit that mark. You know what I mean?
It really is.
So it's like that with a lot of whiskeys. You non-chill filtered or high proof or single barrel. All these things are like what's the opposite of a red flag? It's a
Green light.
It's a green light. These are all great things. I mean, and I really you can't go. I think they've oversaturated the market a bit with Rocky's line. He's got a lot.
He does have a lot.
However,
Yes.
that core range is pretty solid. In my opinion.
Well, I will just mention that it also passed another test that we don't talk about a lot because we're not always in a position to speak to it. But it was one of those cigars that you ever been somewhere where there's a lot of people outdoors and you're smoking a cigar and people stop and say, "What is that cigar? That smells great." And two people did that to me that night as I was smoking. Yeah, and it's like, you know what? That's a lot to ask for, actually, because generally speaking, people who don't smoke cigars don't walk by you and go, "Wow, that smells great." You know what I mean? So it has to be something that has a little bit of richness to the smoke.
In general, even a great cigar still smells like a cigar. So there's
but a bad cigar is the opposite.
It's really, really bad.
It's the opposite. So, do you remember that bad beer taste off you guys did, where you guys rated all the horrible basic light beers?
No,
it's not necessarily horrible.
Bad beer taste. It was a light beer taste.
Sorry, you remember the light beer taste?
Not our favorite kind of beers. Yeah.
You guys should do a version of that with
Cigars.
With cigars, yeah.
I think the Rocky Patel Edge, those $3-4 sticks,
are
phenomenal value.
They really are. We've done before, and I don't remember what show it was. We'll have to go dig this back up, and maybe we should do it again. It's been long enough. But Ian and I both did our top 5 cigars that were $5 or under, which is top 5 like discount cigars, and you know
that was like a year ago.
Yeah,
that's what I call my lawnmower range.
Yeah, that was a fun list.
Yeah.
It was a very fun list. So I have a feeling that a lot of what we're going to be sampling today is not in the lawnmower range because we're surrounded by some incredible whiskeys. We'll be back to talk whiskey and talk the whiskey room with Matt, and it's going to be. I'm glad we're sitting down for this show. That's all I have to say. It's Smokin Toastin, and thank you for joining us.
I like the idea that you have a lawnmower range of whiskey, though.
Yeah,
there's a smoke my lawnmower range.
The lines won't be straight, I tell you.
Somebody
I got to put a coaster on my lawnmower handle.
Not everyone, like a stroller. You ever seen the strollers have the... Those are probably for bottles, but I use them for whiskey.
Well, nobody knows what's in my Starbucks coffee cup, you know what I'm saying? When I'm walking my kids down the road. It's a true story right there.
All right, I don't know how to steal one of these.
Just dig right in. So what we got here is pork belly poutine.
Oh my God, that's good.
Yeah. So the poutine's happening. I need silverware.
Yeah, I got silver plates right over here.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Poutine. So what we're talking here is double baked fries, thick cut, hand cut fries, poutine. We do
Yes.
a cheese curd and gravy with a fried egg on top. This is our shaved pork chop sandwich over here. Everything made in-house, cooked overnight, sent through the deli slicer. We've got our homemade coleslaw, homemade pickles, homemade comeback sauce. And then that's the King Daddy right there. That's the Chef's Way Bosscat burger.
Yeah, we have a plate there.
The Chef's Way Bosscat.
Yeah, so we have Bosscat burger, which is amazing. And Chef's Way, basically, I just say he kicks up the flavor on everything. So he lightly dresses the greens, 2 types of cheese, caramelized onions. It's the way to go. And everything is fat-free, 0 carbs,
Awesome.
0 calories.
Yes.
Cut them heavily.
But hopefully extra gluten, because I usually order my...
and nothing is fair trade here. Nothing is fair trade.
You mentioned yard whiskeys. This is actually a good full range of price-wise.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got the low end to the high end. Price-wise, it's not necessarily the low end on the whiskey.
Right.
I actually brought a travel exclusive, the 4 Oak.
I like the 4 Oak.
It's a nice low-proof one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite a few things. So
The Alberta is probably the most
reasonably
affordable
priced,
of
yeah.
the group, yeah.
So the
But nothing here is over $130.
You haven't had a fight over this, right?
Yeah.
I haven't even seen the
you had one
Suntory
of
right
those.
now. I haven't even seen it out. Has it even hit shelves yet? The little book?
Little book?
Yeah,
Dude, you gotta get it out. There's like,
a few.
you need to leverage your relationships there.
I was asking if
we only got 50 cases for
There's
Houston,
one.
and
I
like
got one on the wall. We got it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
what is it? The little book?
Okay.
Yeah.
I was asking if the dark rye had hit yet.
yeah, dark rye should be out.
Because I'm going to Specs right after this. They have a birthday bourbon waiting on it.
That
one?
whether Specs has it is an entirely different scenario. Because sometimes it takes them longer to get it through the system. So.
All right.
That one.
So that dark rye
It was
has a real yeasty biscuit, almost like a dinner roll.
Uh-huh.
After you kind of let it sit in the mouth for a little bit, you get hit with sherry right away. Even for 80 proof, it's full flavor. Like you get a lot of flavor in the mouth. I got to tell you, I think you were worried about HBS not liking it for the low proof, but I think
It's got a lot of flavor for.
it's got a lot of flavor for a little bit of.
It does.
I'm gonna cut these sandwiches into quarters, and you guys are gonna just
Okay.
get it out of your way.
Man, that's good.
I'm happy to hear that you like it.
Oh
Because
yeah.
it is a bit of a mixed bag out there. And a lot of it is. So it's got. So the breakdown of it is high rye or full rye Kentucky bourbon. So basically what Basil Hayden rye was.
Oh, okay.
Canadian rye and port. Whereas the Alberta Dark Batch is a flip flop of that, and it's predominantly
OGD.
Canadian rye, some OGD and sherry. So
Just a FYI, a lot of ryes, especially the sweeter ones, go really well with IPAs.
oh yeah, I love rye and IPA together. Yeah.
You guys, did you guys do a beer review of Juice Drop or?
No.
So, do you know about Juice Drop? Juice Drop was a collaboration between Parish Brewery out of Louisiana, who doesn't have distribution here, and Spindle Tap out of Houston. And the entire proceeds from this beer release in Houston all go to the J.J. Watt Foundation for the Harvey Relief.
Nice.
So it was a limited edition release, and it was it was a hazy IPA poured in your glass like a can of juice.
It was really good.
I think you guys would do phenomenally well to feature some of these like special Houston releases.
Actually, we have a Harvey Relief Golden Ale from Revolver
Oh man,
today.
I'm a big IPA fan, or I'm a big hazy IPA fan. I'm not a huge fan of that kind of lawnmower pine clipping.
Yes,
Typical
I'm with you
IPAs,
on that, yeah.
whenever, unless
Like
I'm mowing the
juicy
yard.
ones.
Yeah, but I do like the really juicy.
Mowing seems to be a recurring theme.
Right.
Yeah. Guys, I need to mow my yard. Is the point.
That honeydew list is growing.
Well,
You know, my lawnmower walked away a few months ago. By the time I bought a new one, my yard was actually taller than my new lawnmower. I have a picture of it. I was a little embarrassed about that. I had to mow it twice.
Sounds about right.
I mowed it. It looked nice and low and beautiful, and it was all
Thank you,
even.
Matt. You're
My
welcome.
dog walked out there and was up to here. It was at the highest setting of the
Right.
lawnmower.
I gotta try this pork chop.
try this.
This is something I haven't had yet.
Give just a moment here, and then we'll jump into segment 2.
Okay, I gotta like that comment for sure because it's gonna be funny. Jared Liddell says this is just turned into us watching them eat.
Yeah. We'll bring more food out. Here we go.
Wait, in order for them to hear me on Facebook Live, do I have to speak into the mic?
Not necessarily been hearing everything. It says every time you look at a phone, every time you look at your phone, everybody has to take a shot.
Yeah.
Oh, is that what they're saying?
Oh, there we go.
Okay. All right, well,
Oh, wow.
for the record, I'm looking at my phone to watch you guys' comments, so you guys
Yeah.
are kind of cheating the system here.
Yeah.
That's stacked against you.
But all I have to say is if you were here, you would totally be eating this too. Hell with the Facebook Live, you know.
You get a little bit of that shaved pork chop sandwich?
Dude, that's spectacular.
All right. Let's do begin segment 2 here.
Alright, hold on 1 second. Close this down. Alright. Ready?
You wanted a shot.
Go ahead.
Watch it. All right, here we go. Welcome back. It's Smokin Toastin. This is the radio program that is all about craft beer, fine spirits, and hand-rolled cigars. And just like to extend a special thanks to the patience of our Facebook Live audience who's been watching us eat during the break, which I think they posted some snarky comments about. But that's all right.
Sorry, guys, but this is delicious.
Yeah, if you were here, you'd be eating this too. So that's just the way it is. Our program is designed to be all about craft beer and fine spirits and hand-rolled cigars. We're going to be live at the Big Smoke in Las Vegas coming up in really just about a month now.
I can't tell you
we're
how
very excited
excited I am
about
about
that. Not just to attend, just attending itself and reporting on it will be fun. We'll be doing a number of shows while we're out there. I don't know if we'll release it. We'll do them Facebook Live as they happen, and then we'll probably release them, staggered across the next couple of weeks. But what I'm really excited about is that we're lining up some special guests, including we have at least a verbal commitment from Nish and Rocky Patel to join us on the program and talk cigars. So, yeah, I'm really stoked about that. That's going to be good. By the way, we want to mention that we are brought to you by B&B Butchers and Restaurant in Houston at 1814 Washington Ave, opening in the shops at Clear Fork and Fort Worth on November the 20th. And we're really excited about, we love these guys. We're really excited about the November opening for Fort Worth, and we will be planning a road trip.
Yeah, road trip's definitely in the works.
These guys know what they're doing, and they have an absolutely wonderfully stocked bar. Speaking of wonderfully stocked,
This, by the way, all fits into our master plan of finding new and interesting people and going new and interesting places and, smoking cigars.
and drinking and smoking. Yes,
Yeah.
that's the whole master plan. People have asked me before, why did you start the show? And I said it was really a very simple reason. Samples. Yeah. So that was the whole idea behind it. So
Can you call 10 bottles on the table samples?
this has already exceeded our wildest dreams. Trust me. Now we're in a room basically surrounded by whiskeys of all kinds. And Matt from Bosscat Kitchen is. Are you the guy that basically curates this whole supply?
Yes, I am, and it's a great job. First, I want to say we're excited and we're really thankful for you guys coming and enjoy this beautiful room, sitting here and tasting all these whiskeys and talking shop about fine smoke and great beers and spirits. But yes, I get to stock these walls.
What an amazing job. Now, this has to be, you have to have, let me say this another way.
Yeah.
I'll ask the question. Is there a spirit on the wall here you have not tried?
Yeah, as of right now, yes, there is. We just got some allocations in, but that doesn't mean I can't pull it off the wall. You know what I'm
Okay,
saying?
gotcha.
Yeah, I do get to try most. There's always some new fun stuff coming out, as we all know. There's always new stuff hitting the market, and I got to know my product, guys. Come on,
Of course,
you
yes.
got to know it.
I call it research.
Yeah,
That's right. Just out of curiosity, Yawante Curry, is there a spirit here that you haven't tried?
Let's take a look.
and they'll kind of lay
Look,
out this
it's
wall.
taking him that long to find one, if there is. Yeah.
It's one of the tricks of the trade. When you do this a lot, with Kris and with just friends and going to different bottle shares, it's kind of hard not to have a whiskey, because in doing this with people like yourself, just anybody, people are more apt to share whiskey with you and a conversation with you than pretty much anything else that I can think of.
It's different than cigars, because while it's fun to trade cigars with people, I can't just pour you a little bit of the one I'm smoking
Right.
the way you can with the whiskey.
That's
I'm-
awkward.
Even if you
I'm
could, I
a
wouldn't
bottle.
want you to.
Right. Exactly. It's not going to work exactly the right way. Now, you guys have done a couple of events here at Bosscat, have you not?
Yeah, I mean, we've been here a few times. We actually shot a couple of promo videos for our main festival. It happened back in May. We were working on planning the next one. It'll be sometime in April next year. But this place is just, the food is incredible. I mean, he brought out poutine. I've always wanted to try poutine. I've been to Canada a couple times. I never think about it when I'm there. And the first time I tried it was here with a few friends of ours, some guys from the Flight Tasting, a great review group here in Houston. And, I mean, you put a fried egg on it. It's got pork belly in it.
What's not to like?
What's not to like,
Yeah.
right? So we love the food here. And, of course, you look at this beautiful room, and it's a couple hundred whiskeys.
We're right now we're closer to 300 whiskeys. We've got our American spirits, our American whiskey wall here, Irish, Japanese, and Canadian, and then our Scotch blended and single malt over here. And we're if we don't have it, it means we're trying to get it. Basically, is where we're at.
Wow.
Nicely put.
To touch on the food a little bit, guys, it looks like there's none left, guys. Where did it all
good.
go?
No, well, we ate it just to the pleasure of the Facebook Live audience. We ate it during the break. So
We always like to say we're a whiskey bar first, but we design our food around drinking spirits, and we do have some full, rich food, and it pairs really well with all different types of whiskeys.
I love the idea, and this is, I don't know if this makes us arrogant or just smart, but on a day when we're surrounded by all these whiskeys on the wall, we asked Matt to come, of course, but Frank from Beam Suntory is here. He brought whiskey. Kris, Hart, you want to take Courier here? They brought whiskey. It's like we don't know when to leave well enough alone.
That's right.
Is what it really is.
Yeah, we've got a little bit of a love affair with Beam, and more importantly, Frank. I mean, this is one of our early supporters, and I mean, what's not to like? One of my favorite all-time scotches in the world, of course, is Lafroig. I've got more at the house than anything else. And, of course, they cover the entire spectrum from Japanese to Canadian to American.
Scotch.
I mean, they cover all your bases.
My job here is done. I don't even need to be here. Right?
Frank, I will ask you this. Out of all the different whiskey segments that Kris just mentioned, what one is the most, is the hottest right now? What one is really coming on? Is it single malt Scotch? Is it Japanese whiskey? What is it?
You ask a different person, they'll give you a different answer. Me working for Beam Suntory, I mean, half of our name is Beam, which is Jim Beam,
Sure.
and it's Jim Beam White Label is the world's most popular bourbon. So, as such, we can't keep bourbon on the shelves. I think bourbon right now, particularly in the United States, is just explosive. It's in short supply. You see people clamoring over allocated items, but you also see people buying your good everyday bourbons in amounts that double the year before. So
I think he's right. I mean, depending on the region, you ask anyone from Houston specifically,
It's all about bourbon.
It's all about bourbon. I
Yeah.
mean, there are a few people who love their single malts. Like I said, I'm a huge fan, and Lafroig, I think, does pretty well here. We got Don Aiken, who's one of my favorite Lafroig reps. But bourbon is God right now.
So why is bourbon so hot? Can you offer an explanation?
This is just conjecture, but I think it has to do with our American palates. We enjoy
It absolutely
sweet.
does.
And for us, sweet bourbon is just brown sugar and maple and everything you love about American palates. Sugar.
That good vanilla,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a sense of pride as well. I mean, bourbon is ours. Like, we can drink single malts, but they're from Scotland. We can drink Irish whiskeys, but they're from Ireland. But bourbon it can only be made in the United States, and it's something we get to kind of attach ourselves to and call it our own. So.
We recognized a couple of shows ago and did a toast to the world's oldest man who lives in Austin and smokes cigars and drinks whiskey every day. And he was proud to say that most of his whiskey was from the United States,
right?
From Tennessee and Virginia. So
I mean, there are a lot of great single malts that are made here, but it's more of a secondary vibe.
yeah, it's that crafty sort of look at the cool sort of mini distillery stuff that we're doing.
I fell when I got into whiskey. I fell in love with Balvenie and Lafroig and Lagavulin and Glenfiddich. Those classic. When you think of single malts, you think of these brands. Mm-hmm. And hanging out with this guy right here, we ended up getting into bourbon a lot more. And then we got involved in a group here locally, and bourbon just dominates everything. So you couldn't help but fall in love with it as well.
I think we're starting to see a lot of boundaries blurred too. We're going to taste a whiskey today that has a single malt American-made whiskey in it, but it's from what we think of and know of as a bourbon producer.
So that point, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying, before we get to that, I wanted to ask you about this thing that we tasted just before the show started. But go ahead and ask your question.
Well, I was going to. I know
on.
what you're referring to, and I'll agree. I think that there does, with anything, whether it's cigars or single malts, there is a sense of snootiness that happens at some point with beers. If you're drinking out of the wrong glass, with cigars, if you're ashing too early, or if you're cutting with a Zippo or lighting with a Zippo.
The 19 types of beer snobs. We did a whole thing on it. Yeah.
The same thing happens with whiskey, and a lot of people are bourbon fans, and if it's not bourbon, it's less than. Not necessarily bad, but the mentality. And I think that you could really buck that trend with a really solid, high-proof product. I mean, there are plenty of Balcones. They make one bourbon, but their most popular product is corn whiskey.
Right.
So getting outside that realm and dipping your toes outside your comfort zone, you find stuff that you never thought was delicious, and now all of a sudden you're being introduced to something phenomenal.
Frank, what was this that you got us started on before the show? Because this deserves to be talked about.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I'd love to talk about this one because what we started with is a brand new whiskey, and I have to be careful how I say this. It's not a bourbon; it's actually whiskey from Jim Beam called Little Book. And Little Book. A little bit of quick history on that. So Beams have been making bourbon for over 200 years now, and it started with Jacob Beam, and then to Jim Beam, and Jim Beam had a great grandson called Fred No, and his dad was Booker No, and Booker really started this small batch series, which is Knob Creek, Basil Hayden, Booker's, Baker's, etc. And Fred's son, Freddie, kind of exciting bit of news, was just announced officially as the 8th generation master distiller of Jim Beam.
Very cool.
Congratulations.
Yeah, very cool.
Very cool.
And to commemorate that, he released his own whiskey, and it's called Little Book because that was his nickname that Booker gave to him, was Little Book.
Little Book. Wow. Well, this I thought was really exceptional and really kind of moved right towards where my palate is with whiskey. So I want to come back and talk about that one just a little bit in the next segment. And then you mentioned something else that we were going to be tasting. What was that again? Because that sounded amazing. Was it single malt with?
So the single malt's actually a component in Little Book.
Okay.
Teaser for you.
So we'll talk about that when we come back. You're listening to Smokin Toastin, and I'm going to have another bite of this burger. Hello, Facebook Live.
So will there be other lines? Is this the first in a series of Little Book?
Yeah, this is the first in the series. It's called the Easy.
It's good.
Okay.
It's called the what?
The Easy.
The Easy?
So it'll always be basically a blend of whiskeys, but it's always going to be different stuff. And I think what's cool about Little Book is it's going to show people that Jim Beam knows how to make more than just straight bourbon.
Yeah.
So the components of this are wide and varied and pull from we have over 70 rickhouses. Some of them hold either between 35 and 60,000 barrels. Not all of them hold straight bourbon.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of experiments that don't see the light of day. But Freddie...
Booker's Rye.
Yeah, Booker's Rye is a great example. Freddie kind of knows where a lot of the bones are buried, and because that was... So each distiller that kind of moves through Beam has a sort of, I won't say a specialty, but a passion. So Booker was all about pre-prohibition, bringing that style back.
Right.
Really making it happen. Fred, he left his legacy through some interesting sort of experimental stuff, and that from a mash bill perspective, and then that really left to Freddie, who's experimenting more with the blending aspect, which I can talk about a little bit in the next segment. But we don't talk about American whiskey and blending a whole lot. It's a huge thing to talk about in single malt scotches, but we get very caught up on single barrel and things like that, which are great. But it's a different, just a different take on making some really good.
So can we expect something with a sherry cask coming out of Beam?
We technically have one.
Yeah, a couple
Distiller's Masterpiece.
Okay.
So that's a sherry cask. You know, it is the most expensive bottle with the Jim Beam name on it. You know, trying to think.
It's like 150, I think.
If you can find it, yeah. That's I think the last time I saw it, no, it suffers the markup thing. I think it can go as high as $199.
Bring that up when you can. Yeah, on the segment about the people getting caught up on sherry or single barrel and blending's not talked about.
Yeah, no, that's kind of the crux of the
because something that
Anybody gonna go for this last guy?
Go for it.
something that hasn't been that's at least been buffed in the Scotch world is compass box.
Yeah,
tremendously well respected.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Peak monster.
All right, so let's jump into our next segment here.
Ready when you are.
I say as I still
Jump into Bates a minute.
I'm good to go.
Okay, we're rolling. Go.
Welcome back. It's Smokin' Toastin'. This is the radio program that's all about craft beer, fine spirits, and hand-rolled cigars. We're brought to you by B&B Butchers and Restaurant at 1814 Washington Ave in Houston and in the shops at Clear Fork in Fort Worth. Opening November 20th. Road trip. We got a plan. I think it's going to be December.
Smoke
before we can
cigars
hit the
all the
road.
way up there and smoke cigars while we're there, and then smoke cigars
on the way back. I think that'll be a great plan. I think that'll be a fabulous plan.
Sounds phenomenal.
We'll have to toast when we get there.
by the
Toasting on
way-
the road is awkward.
By the way, I feel like I have to, on a show like this, when we're in the whiskey room at Bosscat Kitchen, and we're surrounded by such awesome and amazing whiskeys, and we've talked about, your cigar and my cigar both were a little pricey that we talked about. It really feels like we're sort of catering to the elite here, as in some ways on today's show. So let me balance that out and bring it back down. We've talked about this a couple of times in the past couple of weeks and never gotten to the story. So let's just do it right now. Generic craft beer is here.
Generic craft beer.
Whether you like it or not, it's here. If you go to a Costco, you can buy in the beer section a case of beer that says craft brewed ales, and it's got Kirkland on the box. Because that's the Costco brand name, Kirkland, right? Less than $1 a beer, which is pretty good for any craft beer. So I was reading a guy online that had written an article about going in, buying a case of this, and actually trying it. And in fairness, we haven't done that, and that's something we'll have to look forward to in a future show.
We're going to have to make that happen.
Buying a case.
And by the way,
try it.
Well, yeah, you have to.
I buy a
six-pack.
I buy a 6-pack.
Yeah.
Well, but not at Costco. You don't.
Oh, yeah, at Costco you
At
can't.
Costco,
You had to
can't
buy a
it.
truckload.
Oh no, forget about it. Yeah.
And it was $4 for all
You
of
can get
it.
it in a case or you can get it in a pallet. That's it.
Yeah, I was
Somewhere
going
in
to say
between.
pallet is usually the acceptable amount. Yes, that's right. So the case that this guy bought online consisted of 4 brews, an IPA, a session IPA, an American Pale Ale, and a German-style Kolsch. All the beers in the Kirkland line are brewed by Bricks and Barley Brewing Company in Wisconsin, which apparently has a pretty good reputation as a very good, legit brewery.
A legit craft brewery?
They specialize, actually, it seems, in producing beers for grocery stores in the Wisconsin market. So they definitely, even though they've got some cred, they definitely are sort of in this, we produce for the secondary market sort of a thing. So the guy says, as he had expected, the beers were drinkable, if not very distinctive. In a word, he says they're pretty generic, which kind of makes sense since they're generic craft beer, right? The Session IPA, he says, was the best, light with a hint of bitterness. The American Pale Ale was almost indistinguishable from the Session IPA, but less bitter. The Kolsch was the most unique of the 4, sweeter in a European mold. Along with the Session, he says it was his favorite. So the only one he really disliked was the Straight Ahead IPA, which seemed to be bitter, he said, for the sake of being bitter without any other distinguishing flavors. So so there you go. This is something, I think we're going to see more of this. I mean, we talked about like back in
craft beer at the price of a Lone Star.
Yeah, and we talked about this back in the back in what was the early to mid '80s when generics became a big deal at every grocery store, and you could walk in and buy those white cans with black lettering that just said beer. I love that, but I never bought any. So.
You know, I worked. I've always worked at music stores, and at one of the music stores I worked at years ago, they used to rent horns, like orchestral instruments, to the kids. And one of the major brands, this is no lie, was Jean Eric. I just thought that was funny.
Nice.
So do you? Is the thought that it's not craft because it's for?
I think it still falls under the definition of craft if it's not a big beer company.
I mean, I would agree with you.
Making it. So
small distillers.
Small distillers
contract distill all the time.
Craft. Remember, I mean, we're spoiled because we think craft beer. We think, oh, this is going to be a better quality than mass produced. But craft doesn't necessarily mean that. There's going to be some craft beer that's just not that good.
In the state of Texas, craft literally means less than, 80,000 barrels a year?
I think that's right.
It could be a complete trash company, and not that I'm thinking of anything specific. But I just
who are you trashing here? No, I get it.
I just mean that it doesn't necessarily mean good, but to the average consumer, craft, you think special, you think unique, you think artistically done, beautiful, great. You think of a better product when you when you hear organic or non-GMO or
right. You think of it as being a better
gluten-free.
Thing. Yeah. Although I generally order extra gluten. That's just me.
It's like putting the word custom on an assembly line.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
correct. Yeah.
Well, and craft is just going to become another one of those words that appears in the yellow jaggedy starburst thing that goes around the corner. And
it's like in the music
like
world,
small batch,
right?
In the music world, it's like the word alternative. Like it used to be if alternative meant something really different from the mainstream, and now it's just kind of the way a particular chunk of the music business is described. Everything becomes genericized.
It just looks like beer is going the same way whiskey is. It's going sourced.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think you're going to see more and more of that as
isn't that a chicken and an egg scenario?
That's debatable.
Right. Which came first? Whiskey was doing it first, or beer was doing it first? I think the beer scene's been around a lot longer than whiskey.
Beer got to evolve quicker. So you can open a brewery. And close a brewery quicker than you can open a bourbon distillery and close
it
because
so much higher. Yeah.
Costs so much higher, and you have to wait at least 2 years.
You don't have
for
the same
bourbon.
aging. Sure, right. So that's really fascinating. So you were telling us about this little book.
Yeah.
So this is. How long is this aged now?
So this particular batch is. So first of all, I need to kind of back up.
Okay.
Each batch is going to be a little different.
Okay.
So,
I love that though. That
right.
just makes it like that much more interesting every time it's released.
Right, and we actually took a different approach at this. So this isn't a single aged product. And again, a little bit of history. If you go back to like a Canadian whiskey, they actually make whiskey a lot different than we do here in the United States. They tend to make a single grain expression, and then they blend them after the fact, so they can independently age each expression and then blend. And that's really, and I'm not saying that we took a cue from Canadian whiskey, but that's sort of the approach that we have here. This is a blend of 4 different whiskeys that are all, so there's no neutral grain spirit or anything, so it's not a blended whiskey in the cheap sense of the word. But each individual whiskey was selected and aged independently. So starting oldest to youngest, there's a 13-year-old corn whiskey in this.
Okay.
There are 5.5-year-old single malts, so 100% barley made at Jim Beam. There is a 5.5-year-old full rye, and then a 4-year-old straight bourbon.
Wow.
So all 4 of those are combined to create what's in this bottle. So very different, particularly coming from the Jim Beam side of the family, because we don't usually do things like that.
Right.
We're usually a very much straight bourbon.
More traditional.
Possibly a finish, that kind of thing.
Y'all never done that, right, though?
What's that?
Y'all have never done that. I can't think of a single expression where you've done something like that.
But isn't this becoming much more the way that things are tending to be done now? That the year age of the total product is becoming less important than...
Oh, you mean in regards to no age statements? Yes. That is becoming a standard for sure. I thought you were talking about in terms of bucking the trend, and instead of just releasing a bourbon product, blending
a product,
which really is been very well established and done in Scotland
Yeah.
a lot.
Years.
For
And
years
yes.
and years and years and years. But as far as no age statements, you're correct.
But that's just
Well,
just
if you kinda-
delicious.
Blending is such an amazing art form anyway. I mean, how can you imagine?
Exactly.
It's like being a chef. You take these ingredients,
Right.
and you create this one thing out of it. Well, if you're trying to blend something that tastes the same or similar year after year after year, and your components are
Just
always
like
changing,
cigars.
That's
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's a crazy art form.
Well,
It's
and when
just
you come up
fascinating.
with this, how can you argue with that?
Right.
I don't care how you have to label it.
Right.
That's delicious.
And what's very what I find most interesting about what's in this bottle, this particular batch. Again, next time Freddie releases his next whiskey, it's going to be different. But if you take a look at what the components I just said, a corn whiskey, a malt whiskey, and a rye whiskey, those three components are the mash bill that you would use to create a bourbon anyway.
Right.
So rather than leave it to sort of chance after the mash, he's sort of played with the idea of crafting the bourbon after it's aged versus creating a mash, seeing how it ages, tasting it, and deciding, oh, that was a good mash bill or not.
A little like reverse engineering.
And
A little bit, yeah.
a
It
little
does feel
bit.
like that.
And also, I don't know if anybody, 13-year-old corn whiskey.
Yeah, I was
Is
kind of
no kidding.
You
Yeah.
know, that's really old. Typically, when you're making 100% corn whiskey, you're making it for a sort of commodity type thing, and it doesn't need to sit around that long. So some interesting things happen that we don't normally get to experience. I've tasted each of these components separately.
Yes.
And, I wish that's the way the bottle came with 4 little separate
Right.
shot
You-
glasses. but
You mix them, you just drop
Yeah,
the shot
right.
glasses in. And
So, what was that experience like? Like, did you enjoy them separately, or
Yeah,
is it one
yeah.
of those things where they're not nearly as good
I-
as the finished
So,
product?
so they're all enjoyable. It's definitely one of those situations where the sum is greater than the whole of its parts. What I
being
found, what I found most interesting was the addition of the 4-year-old bourbon to it, because you can tell that the 13-year-old corn by itself, while delicious, is one-dimensional, and you can tell that the other ones, while delicious, are one-dimensional, and together they also appeared a bit one-dimensional. And by adding a bit of 4-year-old straight bourbon to it, it just kind of locked everything up
Brings
and made it
everything-
special.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
it's
that's
everything
going back to the sugar profile, that American sweetness. Throwing in spoonfuls of 4-year-old sugar.
Mhm.
It's going to really just make it pop.
Well, and you said it. It's very much like cigars. It's very much, you can have 4 very sort of like one-dimensional tobaccos, and you put them together in a perfectly blended cigar, and they just like cause each other to bloom. Is the best way I
Now,
can say it.
is this aged at all after it's blended?
Nope, it's so
Straight up,
it's
huh?
it's vatted, and as a matter of fact, we asked Freddie himself that question, and he's like, I don't know, I guess it's sat overnight.
I love it. That's the kind of aging that I really like, because I'm so impatient.
That's fresh
All right,
whiskey.
it occurs to me that for a show to be surrounded by as many whiskeys as we are right now, even as many as are on the table, we have done a really poor job of actually getting in there and tasting. So we're going to do a segment coming up where we really do some tasting, because we've only tasted the one. We'll really do some tasting here. Plus, I want us to try Revolver Brewing's Harvey Relief Golden Ale, and that'll be coming up in the next segment. You are listening to Smokin Toastin.
Nice.
Have you guys ever thought of doing a...
You can stop that question because you guys are. We're still working on that.
So and I might have mentioned this before, so stop me if I'm repeating myself, but I'm a big fan of Joe Rogan's podcast. And he does, some episodes are an hour and a half, some were 3 hours. He did one with Bert Kreischer and the guys, and it ended up being 6 hours. Have you guys ever thought about ever calling an audible and extending an episode? Not to stop the chemistry or stop the flow, but if you're having a really good conversation or have you ever thought about extending it another segment?
Well, we
one piece
have.
at a
I mean,
time?
the reason we use the structure that we have is because of starting out. This was less about being a podcast and more about being a show on Radio Brave. And as that has evolved, the podcast has become the more important piece of the whole thing, and more about how people use it. So, while we're still putting it on Radio Brave, we need the right structure for that. It's become less important in the bigger picture. And we did do, actually, when we were at
El Cabano.
El Cabano,
Yeah,
we did a whole bonus segment that's available only on the YouTube
YouTube page, which I can't find, by the way.
It will be up and running
Okay.
soon. We've had some issues getting it running.
You mentioned YouTube in one of the, I think at the beginning portion or some section of maybe the Balvini episode or Balvene, and I went looking for the YouTube page and I couldn't find it. I was like, okay, I could have sworn I've seen it on YouTube, but I guess it was just Facebook Live.
Yeah.
Right. We'll get that taken
We're
care
getting
of.
all of that taken care of and getting it's about getting the feed,
Of course.
connected to the right thing. But
Yeah, I mean it's just like late night shows. They'll cut the interview down for the TV portion, and leave the full thing up.
Sure,
online.
and more that's becoming the trend of just like we had Manny at El Camano was just so interesting.
Yeah.
Like I was like, let's just keep going. You know? He was exuberant. Loved him some cigars.
Well, if you're gauging the length of the show off how interesting your guests are, this will be over in 10 minutes.
I thought he was doing great. What are you
I was
talking about?
referring to myself.
Remember that coming down.
Oh, you're still here? I forgot you were here. Sorry.
So, Frank, have you opened 25th anniversary?
Well, not today. I haven't. Wasn't that your?
Good answer.
Wasn't that your answer? Yeah.
Let's try that out.
You got a couple extras down here.
Oh, well, please let's get these.
This is the second. This is the
Let's
second
share the
half.
book.
Second half.
Are we?
This is where it all happens.
Are we planning
Now you
on?
don't care so much.
Oh, yeah, we got
It's
it.
kind of screwed up a little bit.
Actually, it is one of those.
Are we planning on coming back to the little book a little bit? I have a few more questions.
I wanted to know, did
What's
you
your
guys
question?
proof it down after it was mixed?
It's cast strength,
so
right?
This is full cast strength.
I
This
still
one comes
can-
in at 120.4.
Right.
I still contend it's not technically cast strength. Were you part of
Because
that
it's a mix.
conversation?
We talked about that.
Yeah.
So I would say it's.
Well,
I struggle for the right word. It is.
you could say foolproof because that's very.
Foolproof is.
Because 1792, their version of the definition of foolproof strictly has to do with they cut it down to 125, which would be the maximum allowed proof going into the barrel.
Right.
So they call to them foolproof means that.
Right.
To me, barrel strength is a little less vague and very specific. That what's in the barrel, the alcohol in the barrel, is barrel proof.
Right.
So if you pull it out and add water to it, you're cutting it down. But also if you pull it out and cut it with a lesser proof whiskey, you're also cutting it with another whiskey.
Right.
Oh, we're using.
I told us about that.
But you're more than
I feel
welcome.
like a cast drink should be one cash.
I think you could say batch strength or.
So batch strength is something I thought of particularly good for this because
By the way, it's really good.
I love Little Book.
It's
I was
solid.
I was
Yeah.
super skeptical first tasting. 'cause
Most
when you
people
hear-
would be.
when you hear blended whiskey from Beam,
When you
brand
say
new
13-year
distiller,
point.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. You know,
When
but-
Orphan Barrel released Whoop and Holler, people
Yeah.
were all excited at first until they realized the front said American whiskey.
Well, right.
Try some of that.
So, what I find, so with Little Book in particular,
Thank you, sir.
none of the batches have had water added, but since they're blended and some are higher proof, some are lower, but that's why I don't feel it. That's why batch strength for this one works for me.
Correct.
Thank you, sir.
Now for Booker's, same thing because Booker's isn't a single barrel.
Right.
You know, it's
Unfiltered, I agree with. Uncut, I don't. But it's not necessarily a complaint on the product. I love
Right.
Booker's. In fact, I have two. Well, I
So,
technically
okay,
have.
so when you say you don't agree with uncut, what is that?
He's turned into a
No, I do agree with Uncut.
Oh,
No, and I
okay.
haven't turned into a wave. You've been agreeing with me this whole time.
Yeah, but it's just a joke. What I'm saying is that it's the purest form, you know?
By the way, I like Wade.
I was gonna say.
I don't have a problem with Wade. I just mean, like, I no problem with Uncut. Uncut's accurate. Batch strength is fine. It's not necessarily a detriment to the product. Again, I have two shelves in my house, 2.5. It's a Lafroy shelf, and the very top of my bookshelf is all Booker's, all releases, and in the middle is a Booker's Rye.
Yeah. All right.
I've got a Whitmire shelf too, but that's strictly because I collected Whitmires faster than I can drink them. Shout out to Whitmires.
This might be the only beer we do. So,
Yeah, I figured since we have whiskey aplenty.
but since he is,
What do you call it? Nomenclature?
Chris had brought up the Harvey Relief, and this is the Harvey Relief from Revolver, which is a
Oh, is it? Yeah, let's taste it. I'm excited.
Yeah, so this will be in the next segment.
I got into whiskey to get away from beer.
Yeah,
There's so many good beers out there right now. It's hard not to.
I know it's
I'm in love
fantastic.
with coconut porters
Why are
right
you
now.
trying to get away from beer?
I was putting on weight, man. I hit 240.
Coconut style.
Well, I
hear
drink
you on
nothing
that.
but beer and whiskey was a treat, and now I drink nothing but whiskey and beer is a treat.
Beer's definitely a treat. In fact, I'll go on this in a segment. It's probably the most unhealthy thing I do. But when I'm trying to cut 10 or 15 pounds,
Beer for breakfast.
beer for breakfast. I'll have one beer for breakfast instead of eating, and I'm good until noon.
Oh, one of the greatest
Lost 10
lines.
pounds in a week.
One of the greatest lines ever written
Beer diet?
in a song was Kris Kristofferson. The beer I had for breakfast wasn't bad, so I had one more for dessert.
There's a coconut porter and a few what's that thing out of Eighth Wonder?
Oh, they're
The rocket fuel.
Yeah.
A Vietnamese breakfast coffee.
Yes.
Just, oh my god, man!
Love it.
Lose 10 pounds in a week.
Segment 4. Welcome back to Smokin Toastin. We are surrounded by whiskey, and that's not a bad place to find yourself, by the way. We are live at the Bosscat Kitchen at 4310 Westheimer in Houston, and found out about this place actually when my business partner Pat, who we've mentioned on the program before, came over here for dinner. He walked in the whiskey room and he called me that night and goes, "You got to see this place."
Nice.
So that's how we first got hooked up with these guys, and we've been talking about doing a show here for quite some time. And thanks to Matt from Bosscat for helping put this together for us. So we want to get to really seriously tasting some whiskey this break, or this segment rather. But first, before we do that, we had talked earlier in the show about some special beers that had been put together for Hurricane Harvey relief. And one of the places that was the first to do it was Revolver Brewing, which is from Granbury, Texas, up near Dallas and Fort Worth. And Revolver has actually put out a Harvey Relief Golden Ale, and it's got the I don't know if Facebook Live can see that up close, but it's got the hurricane logo with the red cross, sort of cross right in the middle of it. And it does say it's a golden ale, and it does say that 100% of all profits go to relief charities for Hurricane Harvey, which I thought was really cool. Yeah, they describe it as brewed to help. It says an easy drinking golden ale made from 2-row malted barley and hopped with Saphir and Citra. Cheers to people helping people. I just thought that was really cool and thought we wanted to support their product by talking about it on the show today and encouraging you to get some, but I haven't tasted it yet. Generally, while I'm describing the beer, you're doing research, so talk to me.
I was doing research. This is light, crispy, delicious. It has some breadiness to it, and hoppiness. It's actually goes down way too easy.
It's a little hoppier than I would have maybe expected for a
reminds
golden
me
ale.
of an IPA.
Yeah,
It's got a very...
But it doesn't leave a hop bitter in the mouth like a lot of IPAs do.
Definitely doesn't linger.
It's kind of hop in the middle, not at the very end.
It's definitely it's a serious beer.
It finishes a little more malty almost. I think.
Yes,
like
I
malty
agree.
with a crispy bitter. It's like bready with some citrusy stuff. I don't know. How are you feeling about it?
Nice
Frank?
technical term.
So this wasn't what I expected by, we taste with our eyes first sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought this was going to be, a juicier, a little more viscous.
Yeah.
A little bit more of
Viscous
that
sounds
weight.
cool.
But it's kind of pleasantly light
Yes.
and refreshing. And it's still got, some of that juiciness.
It's got that lager crispness.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even though it's an ale.
Uh-huh.
It's a very crisp
Yeah.
bite to it.
It does. It has is a very almost Kolsch-like quality to it.
For
Yeah.
Reminds me of something you drink during a hot summer while mowing the yard.
Wow, mowing the yard.
And
We're back
see, it
to mowing the
all
yard
comes
again.
back
It all comes
together.
back, circle of life.
All comes back together.
Does anyone
So-
in here actually mow their own lawn?
No, I do not. I live in a high rise. So
I do.
It used to be a great getaway from the kids and, just the noise, I just haven't had time.
I live in a high rise, and the last place I lived that had a lawn, the lawn was so small. I would say I was going to mow, but really I was breaking out the weed eater.
If you go out on your balcony and look over your lawn, it's actually Discovery Green.
Well, that's right, and they have someone who mows that.
Right.
So,
Fortunately for you.
yes, fortunately, that's absolutely right. So, kudos by the way to Revolver Brewing for doing the Harvey Relief.
I thought
Golden
one of
Ale.
the first beers we had on the show was Revolver's
One
Blood
of
and
the
Honey.
first one I remember was the Blood and
Still
Honey.
buy that stuff
Yeah.
regularly. It's
So good. So good.
Great beer.
And they're another Revolver, one of the best arguments for this big beer buying craft beer is not necessarily a bad thing because they were bought a year or more ago by Miller Coors. And they're still putting out amazing quality product. So
That's a weird
it's tough.
dichotomy there with the whole
it is.
big brew thing.
By the way,
some people actually go, completely against the grain when you sell. They don't want to do anything.
They treat it like a
Yeah.
sellout. But
Yeah.
if you had a small business and then you had the funding to do everything you've dreamed of, I would think it's a good thing.
If you had a band and then you got popular, are you a sellout?
It
You start selling records?
It depends on what the band does.
So I used to call that the amphitheater effect. Like it's cool
Or
to
the
go
Green Day
see-
effect.
Yeah, right. It's cool to go see the band.
See,
when they're
and
playing
here we
acoustic.
go. And here we go. Yes. Yeah, but no, you're 100% right. By the way, while we're on the subject, because we promise to update everyone on this each show, the Take Craft Back movement, which is trying to raise $216 billion
I absolutely
to
laughed.
buy Anheuser-Busch. As of this morning, $2,962,000.
Almost there.
1%.
$2,962,810. So
It all starts with the first 1%.
that's right.
I'm just
That's
happy
right.
about that whole movement.
I could
Yeah.
do a lot with $2 million if they end up not knowing what.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. you could launch a great craft brewery. That would be awesome.
You could pay a lot of that Kirkland's.
Well, yeah, a whole lot of the Kirklands. So let's move on and taste some. I don't know what you've poured here, but during the break, you poured us our next whiskey to sample.
So the next thing I poured, well, at least for a couple of you guys, is our Knob Creek 25th anniversary. Sorry, Chris.
It's okay.
Hold on,
I
I'll
haven't
just hand you the
tasted it.
bottle because I
He's
know
way
better.
over there being left out.
We were talking about sort of the latest generation.
Yes.
This barrel was laid down when Booker was still alive, which is a pretty neat thing. When we're talking about heritage and family legacy in the bourbon world. So it's 25th anniversary, but don't let the big number on the front of it get you caught up. Let me get the exact age off the bottle because it's in some years and months and things. So we're looking at this was barreled on February 25th of 2004. So. We're just over 13 years on this.
Not exactly 25th, but yeah.
Right. Well, but it's 25th anniversary of Knob Creek. So
Off the brand, yes.
And for a little bit of back history, Knob Creek when it came out was this was supposed to be the return to the pre-prohibition style of whiskey.
Right.
After Prohibition, we suffered sort of this. Let's get some whiskey out quick and let's drink everything that comes out. And we lost that sort of full-bodied, lots of flavor, big bold essence of what bourbon used to be. So Knob Creek in general as a line is a return to that, and this is just sort of an extra special version of Knob Creek.
Ian, I noticed you were already doing research, and you got a pretty big smile on your face.
It's actually extra special, I have to tell you.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fantastic. The nose on it, like the sugar and the brown sugar that you were mentioning earlier, like right up front in the nose. It rolls right across the palate. A little bit of heat going across, a little bit coming back up on the aftertaste, and just leaves this wonderful kind of burnt caramel aftertaste that makes you want more.
Yeah, you're at 121.9 on this batch. So
It's pretty amazing.
Slightly
actually.
higher than their typical single
Yeah.
barrel. And
I'm
it's,
actually going to try this again with just a little bit of water. If you'll.
oh, yeah.
Yes,
It
I think that's a great
you wanna
idea.
you guys mentioned this in the last one with the Balvenie guys, talking about adding a little water to it to open it up. I have mixed feelings on that, but I will say when you get up to the 60% and the 120 proof, that a couple of drops really does take off that front end edge and lets you really open it up. Brown sugars, tons of oak. I love people like to say the word over oaked. I think that Knob Creek is really good about a great charred barrel flavor in a positive way. I thoroughly enjoy it.
Yeah, I've seen some, I've tasted some really old Knob Creeks. I feel like this is a really good sweet spot for the extra age on Knob Creek. And on the water thing, it's kind of interesting because when we talk to the people in this room, we're in our own little bubble. We love full strength whiskeys as high as proof as possible. But when the average consumer is out buying this, there's absolutely nothing wrong with proofing it down to where you like it.
Oh, there's
And
nothing wrong with you drinking it any way you like.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
it's a real snooty thing. Back to the.
I generally like a couple cubes of ice, like small cubes of ice in my whiskey most of the time. I will tell you, I just added a little bit of water, like just a straw full of water to this. And you mentioned the oak blossoms.
Oh, yeah, it opens
as soon
up
as
like
I did
crazy.
that, it's like oak all the way across
It's a
the
stave.
palate now.
Stave in your mouth.
Yeah.
It's really remarkable to me how much the flavor profile, I don't want to say changed, but shifted
Yes.
Like it's like it shifted just to the left, and for my particular palate, it shifted in exactly the direction that I would want it to.
Well, see,
like I love it with
and that's
just
one
that
of the
little
reasons,
splash of water.
Like at home, when I pour whiskey, I generally will pour it neat like this, and I'll taste it. And you do a couple sips like that. Then I add a couple cubes of ice because I like the dynamics of first I get to taste it neat, then I get to taste it cold and mostly neat, and then that water starts to
Then you get the diluted,
starts to dilute it down a little bit, and I get to taste it through all the different levels
Stages,
of how watery it is.
That's right.
And it just, to me, it's a journey through the whiskey that just, I love that.
I didn't bring
That's
the
like my favorite
story.
way.
I didn't bring the story with me today, but I did read a story recently that there is now basically scientific evidence for water improving the taste of certain spirits at a molecular level.
Yeah.
That there's that they can show you basically scientifically why this would be a preferable thing.
It's all about molecule size and how those molecules fit into the little pits and valleys of your taste buds and your tongue.
I'm just like leave it to the scientists to try to explain. Just I like that better.
My favorite little water story is actually one Fred No told me when I'd first started at Beam, and he told me a story of how his dad drank whiskey, which was to go to his bottle of Booker's. It wasn't even called Booker's at that point. And he would fill up a pint glass, about 3/4 full of whiskey, then go over to the faucet, the tap, and add a little bit of water, and then that would be his glass of whiskey for the morning.
Morning.
For the morning, yes, I love this.
Strong
I love this.
We talk about adding drops to our little Glencairns, but he was, a good faucet pour in the pint glass.
This has, with the water opening up a little bit too, it has a little bit of a mineral flavor that comes out that I really enjoy as well.
So that flavor you're talking about, I think, at least to me, I taste it more prevalent in wild turkey products. It reminds me of a copper pot still.
Right.
It's got a bit of a maple vibe that comes out in it as well. So, all right. So we're going to be back for our final segment here. And what I would like to challenge the whiskey guys in the room here is if we've got time, based on what we're surrounded by and what's on the table in front of us, if we've got time to taste 3 more whiskeys, what are they? Think about that.
I'm going to go home.
And we'll be back. It's Smokin Toastin.
I thought the challenge was blowing sober and breath
If I had to pick one unique thing, I think that 4 Oak on the table and that Tircano 16 are pretty special.
What's the proof on the Tircano?
It's lower. It's 86.
The 4 Oak is 40.
So I just want to mention, I don't know how Matt would feel about it, but we've never done anything with Whistle Pig on the show.
Well,
They've got it.
You're not missing anything.
Really?
So Whistle Pig is actually not a bad product. I started drinking Whistle Pig. I thought it was fine. Right here, Alberta.
No, here you go. There's Whistle Pig.
This is made at the same place. Whistle Pig sources their 100% Alberta rye from this distillery. And Whistle Pig.
So why has it gotten to be such a big deal?
It's a couple things. Marketing is one of them. It's a cool product. A lot of people buy into it. There is a certain, you're talking about American palates, Texas palates. There's a big chunk of folks who really enjoy a really strong, aggressive hay.
That corn taste.
I like to say benzene, but the corn. Yeah,
I know what you're saying. It's a medicinal kind of.
And it's really a finger polish remover. Garrison Brothers does have a cult following for some folks because they enjoy a really abrasive whiskey. Put hair in their chest.
That makes them feel like they're having a
whiskey. No one put on my steel-toed boots
and.
So Whistle Pig's actually not a bad product. My issue with Whistle Pig strictly has to do with, I think they're a little manipulative in their advertising and more importantly their price. 15-year-old Whistle Pig is $200. There's 20 whiskeys I can recommend that are better for
at that price. Yeah.
So it's not that I have an issue with them. It's not bad. In fact, some of the single barrels are pretty fun. But Killen's has a great
Buffalo Trace, though, like the other sort of like hot whiskey on the internet that everybody is talking about, you're a fan of that.
Yeah. But that's not source. That's their stuff.
It's also less than $30 a bottle, too.
Right. Yeah. Well, you can't.
And that's a big part of it. This Alberta right here, the same distillery as Whistle Pig, a lot more going on in the bottle. A third of the price, a little less than half the price. So
I love that.
It's anytime you source a product, it's another middleman that you've got to pay.
Right.
So nothing wrong with Whiskey Pig. A lot of people like it. I would never shame anybody for drinking it. It's a decent product. But for $75.
So the cost is inflated because they need to recoup what they
Well,
paid.
they age on site for some of the whiskeys
Virginia,
as well.
right?
It's a farm.
Connecticut?
No. That area though. Vermont.
Yeah. Same difference.
All those little states, you never figure out which ones they are.
They're like cities. San Antonio, Austin,
That's definitely.
Back to that Buffalo Trace thing, people really love Kentucky bourbon. That's the big thing. Kentucky bourbon, it's distinct. You know it when you pour it in a glass. You know it when you nose it. You know it when you taste it. You know it when it burns going down. You just know it.
That's why Whitmeyer's does so well. It's not just a grassroots campaign. Whitmeyer's, although very expensive, their product made right here in Houston is the closest thing to that Kentucky profile out of Texas.
Agreed.
Across the board.
Agreed.
So if the single barrel that we did for the Bourbon Society, they took a loss. They didn't have to, but they sold it to their distributor and to Specs for much lower than $30-40 lower than what they could have sold it at the distillery. At the distillery, it's $90. At Specs, the bottle was $76. So we went through a middleman, distributor, then to the retail environment. They all got their cuts, and it still ended up being cheaper. So if Whitmeyer's can get an actual real financial backing behind them, and they're producing more than just out of a strip center warehouse, it's the closest thing to Kentucky profile.
Joe's doing a good job. It continually gets better too, which is
correct.
I think a good earmark.
And then a lot of older stuff too. We were seeing 22-month-old barrels. Now we're seeing 27-month-old barrels. We're in that straight bourbon range.
Yep.
So what are we drinking in our last segment here, guys?
All right. So we haven't touched. We've done all bourbon. Do we want to do some single malt?
I agree with you. I think we should start with the 4 Oak. We can do 5 minutes on that and then focus on your Terracona.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Show where you
Getting the less for
I
that.
love it when that happens. Love it when that
I
happens.
don't have enough, but it'll drown out any bourbon smell.
They're like, I got this.
All right, go.
Yeah, it's
what,
so
are we
smoky
drinking,
peat,
guys?
it'll get rid of it.
I told you that was what I wanted the show to be. I wanted you to show up and talk on the mic and drink.
I'm not talking too much, am I?
No, you're all good. You're all good.
You're beautiful, baby.
Part of it.
You mean
We love
for
it.
the show?
Or in general. This is the one time that HBS has not seen me post.
Yeah, Kris hasn't posted in at
Facebook
least
Live. Is he
15
talking
minutes
too
now.
much? Let us know.
Don't do that.
Gene, because I know you got guys on there.
Where are the comments?
Oh, Gene has a running commentary going on here the whole time.
Does he?
Gene, well, everyone is so close, and you see the same people every day. They're just constantly giving each other a hard time.
Yeah. One of the things about Facebook Live is like none of us are in a position where you can tell the boss, "Yeah, I'm just going out to a long lunch." Like when you're here, you're like the world knows.
right.
Actually, I did. I told my boss I had an appointment. I told him what we were doing.
Wait, Chris Hart, are you supposed to not be here?
Yeah,
right now?
I'm sick at home, but no, I did tell him that I was taking a.
I'm not feeling so well. I'm going to go home.
I think I've got the black lung.
All right. So if we're ready, let's jump into our final segment here, and you guys can start pouring the whiskey.
Great.
So where are we going first?
Whiskey.
I think we're going to do the whiskey. We'll go the whiskey direction. You want to do 4 Oak first? Huh?
Yeah. Let's do the 4 Oak first.
All
So it's me being the big fanatic I am for Lafroig. Once you get into whiskeys, you find out a horrible secret to the side of whiskey, and that is that there are actual expressions of your favorite whiskeys that are not available to you.
Yes.
They sell exclusively overseas or while you're traveling. So I had to find some website in a language I didn't speak. I had to Google Translate it and ask them to ship me a bottle of this right here.
I hope his
This
credit
is-
card didn't get
this is-
compromised.
So this is from your collection.
Yeah, this is my personal product, or my personal bottle. It's a travel retail exclusive called 4 Oak. Lafroig did the quarter cask a few years back, which is
I have that on my shelf.
It's a phenomenal product. I think it's 48%.
Yep.
Just phenomenal product. Then they did the triple wood, which is also a great product. But every time you age in a new barrel, it mellows it more, makes it a little bit more lighter, a little bit more thinner. Not thin necessarily, but just not as intense. And Lafroig's known to punch you in the throat. this 4 Oak is the most recent besides the 1815.
Yeah, right. Yes. Most recent other than that.
Picked it up in the Netherlands, and they shipped me a full liter, and it's 40%. So for those of you who like a lighter proof, this is a great start.
Cool.
And it's peated.
Let's start it.
We're going to go a whole different direction.
You guys ready?
Yeah, this is going to ruin you, by the way.
And now we start the show.
Yeah, it's got some. There we go.
All right.
Here, let me fix that.
Welcome back as we pour whiskey to Smokin and Toastin. This is show number 64. We are live from the Whiskey Room at Bosscat. Our program is brought to you by B&B Butchers and Restaurant at 1814 Washington Ave in Houston.
Bacon.
And in the shops at Clear Fork in Fort Worth, opening November the 20th. Fort Worth, prepare yourself for bacon.
Bacon.
All we have to say.
Yeah, if you're
You will
listening,
not be
to
disappointed.
us in the Fort Worth area, the bacon.
Bacon.
Just
Just
the
remember
bacon.
we said bacon.
Bacon.
That's all I have to say. All right, so we wanted to taste 3 whiskeys in this final segment here, and so we've sort of opened up, and I think we were having a great conversation about this during the break, and I think Kris thought we were already in the next segment. So
I thought that was all on
I
air.
would love for you to repeat how you came about this bottle of Lefroy.
So I'm a bit of a fanboy for Lefroy, which is probably why I love Frank so much, but it's...
One of the reasons.
We thought it was his winning personality.
Yeah.
Yes.
In his dapper dress. But no,
Yes.
I'm going to repeat what I said to the break for those who didn't hear. But basically, one of the downsides to getting into whiskey is finding out that they offer a bunch that aren't available to the U.S. So it sucks because you want to try this new thing. You're excited to try something new, and you find out you can't get it. But I actually found a website that would ship me a bottle of this. And this is Lefroy 4 Oak. It's cut to 40%, which I believe is their lowest proof offering. Everything before that, I think, was 43 was the lowest they offered. But it's it's been matured in 4 different casks, and every time you add a new cask to that process, it kind of smoothens it out a little bit, kind of makes it more mild, less of a punch in the throat, the way that Lefroy is known to be.
Well, this is pretty peaty, I can tell you just from the nose.
Yeah,
It's
Lefroy.
nothing-
You know, we pride ourselves on peat for Lefroy. What for those of you who may not know, the peat is the way we dry out the barley, and Lefroy has a sort of unique approach. There's so we have a brand called Bumware where we would start a nice hot peat fire and dry out the barley over that. Lefroy is a little different. We start a nice hot peat fire. Then we do the equivalent of stamping it out with your feet. And then, when your campfire just smolders.
Right, just
for
sitting
a
there with
while,
that smoky, smoldery
right,
thing.
and we dry it out with that. And it being an Islay malt to boot, you get the salinic quality, you get the earth, the terroir. Peat's actually one of those really interesting things in spirits where you get some terroir.
Right.
Because typically that sort of thing is
More of a
distilled out.
wine thing, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we have
For those of you who don't know, peat is moss.
Yes, it's it's
If you've ever done a hanging basket, it's that
Yes.
stuff around the outside edge.
It's a
of the
little
hanging
different
basket.
than that, actually.
Yeah.
So those peat bogs are actually, you have these big open landlocked fields that have no erosion. So what happens is when this grass dies, it partially decomposes, new grass comes up, and you've literally got thousands and thousands of, I think it's 1,000 years for every foot, every 12 inches.
it's I think it grows half a millimeter a year or something.
Oh my
insane
God.
So
like
you,
that, yeah.
you go down a foot, you're literally going back 1,000 years. Which
Wow.
means this glass, what you're drinking, took 1,000 years to make in theory and practice.
I noticed it doesn't say semi-rotted anywhere on the label.
But that's what it is. It's partially
Right.
decomposed
Right.
plant matter.
and anything else that's in the environment, whether it's plant matter, animal matter, the salt from the ocean. That's what gives each of
someone
the peated
dies?
whiskey. Yeah, right.
There's a
Which
body
I
in
have
there
to say,
somewhere.
by the way, whether you are a creationist or an evolutionist, doesn't really matter. This is one of the most beautiful things about this either created or highly evolved planet
Yes.
on which we live. That things like this all come together to create this kind of wonderful subtlety in a product that's so amazing to consume.
It's tremendously unlike what you think of when you think of whiskey. And my favorite part of it is after you empty the glass, smell that empty glass.
Yeah.
It is so perfumey and aromatic and it takes a while to get used to peat, but once you get into it, it's a beautiful thing.
I love Lefroy.
You're the
Prepares
peat
well,
man.
bacon.
Yeah, you're the peat man.
I
So-
love Lefroy. I've had friends smell the Lefroy and tell me it smells like a Band-Aid or a bunch of other things that sound bad. And It's peaty. This is not Fisher Price, my first Scotch.
No, for sure.
This is something you develop a taste for after a while. And, you try a lot of different single malt scotches, and you get some peat here and some peat there. You start to recognize the flavor, and then eventually you learn that flavor, and you go, okay, I want to try more of that. And then you end up at Lafrague.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Because there's a lot of it.
Yeah.
Kris, you mentioned it during the break that you actually bought this online on a website that you had to use Google to translate the...
the Netherlands.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a website in the Netherlands that got it and got them to ship it to me in the U.S. and it's fairly reasonably priced. It's a
I was just saying,
1
what did it
bottle.
cost you for a 1 liter bottle?
I bought it.
I think it
with
should be about
along a-
$60.
Okay, I want to say it was around $50.
Yeah, it
I
could be.
bought it with
Yeah.
a PX cask and a 1 liter quarter cask.
There's an easier way to obtain these bottles.
Talk to me.
So you plan a really amazing European vacation.
Oh, I like this.
You
yes.
spend all your money on the European vacation, and then
You bring it back manually.
What's a couple $100 after you spend all that money on a European vacation?
So what are the legalities actually of bringing back bottles like this
So you can
on
bring-
the plane?
It's totally legal. You can bring back up to 3 liters, I believe, into the United States, as long as it doesn't exceed the $600 value or whatever it is. I'm not going to say I never pay attention to that because
If
we're
you
being
announce
recorded.
it, tell
but-
them because they're going to ask you.
Yeah. So right. So I know we need to probably pour our next whiskey
Yeah.
if we're gonna hit our 3. So
Yep.
why don't we jump to that? And I just will mention while we're doing that I do this with craft beer when I go to different states to visit a friend or on business or whatever. I'll go shopping I'll look for stuff that I know is not available to us here in Houston, Texas, but I'll get a whole bunch of it so we can review it on the show. But what I do is let's just say I find a way to get it home that doesn't involve bringing it on the airplane. Not that I would ever put it in a box and ship it here, because that would be a highly controversial way to do it. But
if you get caught. So if, to your point, you say plan an amazing vacation.
Right.
But if you spend all your money on this Netherlands website, you won't have any money to go on vacation.
True.
But they'll still ship it to you.
It's a bit of a chicken and an egg issue, I suppose.
That's correct. Yeah. It's a bit of a cycle.
what are we tasting next?
So next up is something, something completely different. We're going to move away from the peat, so you might want to cleanse your palate with something. But
Should have done that one first then.
no, it's fine. So this is something you don't see a ton of, although they're becoming more prevalent. This is a single malt from Ireland. So done in this single malt Scotch style, but done in Ireland. And Ireland's got some unique attributes. And for me personally, and for the Tyrconnell line, which is what this is part of, the stills in Ireland are very large. And I think as a whole, it creates this very fruity, light-bodied whiskey. So what we're going to drink next is the 16-year-old expression from Tyrconnell. So again, you don't get a lot of really old Irish whiskeys these days. There's a few from other companies like Redbreast, but on the whole, they tend to be a younger whiskey. Getting a 16-year-old expression is nice. This one's all in ex-bourbon. And first fill, so you get a bit of the sweetness from the bourbon barrels, but you do this pervasive fruitiness. I don't like to give tasting notes out because I feel they're influential, but for me, this is biting into a nice green pear.
Well, I
was going to say apple and pear,
Uh-huh.
and man, this is really, really nice.
Yeah, this is a spectacular bottle. It's an LTO.
Oaky, very oaky, too.
Yeah. It's still got a lot of that and you don't get a lot of that oakiness from the Scotch side or the Irish side because we're using 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th fill barrels. But you get a lot of it out of this.
Somehow this does make me think Irish when I drink it. And maybe it's the power of suggestion. You talking about it. Maybe it's the fact that I'm, 5.5 seasons into watching Ray Donovan. I don't know, but either way you look at it. And by the way, he goes through his fair share of whiskey on the show, and I've always wondered, I wonder if there's like an Irish single malt that would be his favorite, because sometimes you can recognize the label on the bottle that he's drinking, and sometimes you can't.
That's right.
But anyway, very interesting though. I love this flavor profile. This
is like pear and green grape.
Absolutely.
And
very
oak.
fruity.
Yeah.
And
What do you call them? A lot of what do they call those types of fruits?
Esters.
This is really
You
good.
don't normally think of whiskey as having that kind of a
Pear.
fruit profile.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know, you
lots
think
of
of that more as like a wine thing, or
Right.
maybe some other different kinds of spirits. But that it just works. I don't even know how to
This would make an
explain it.
incredible
But,
cigar pairing.
oh
Yes.
my
Oh,
god!
I love
yeah,
this.
This
This is
is
a good
amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
this is a really neat bottle, and we'll release a new high-end LTO. Sorry, that's industry speak for limited time offer every March. So this was this March's, and it's I think next year.
What does this bottle retail for?
It's $100.
$100.
It's not a bad price.
Wow.
It's
Well
for
worth
16-year-old
it
For
whiskey.
16
That's
whiskey.
delicious.
Well
stuff.
worth it.
Yeah.
Absolutely
All right,
fantastic.
so I know we're going to be probably rushing the clock here, so why don't you grab us our last one? While you're
Let's-
pouring that, let me thank the guys here at Bosscat Kitchen at 4310 Westheimer in Houston for allowing us to do the broadcast here, for allowing us to be surrounded by such wonderful bottles of whiskey. And with just a moment left here, let's see if we can't taste.
So I'll zip
taste
through this
something
real quick. This is a really unique offering. We're going to go back to America from the small batch line at Jim Beam, and this is a Basil Hayden Dark Rye.
Oh my!
Again, we were talking about experimenting with the Little Book side of the family. This again is not a bourbon. It is a blended whiskey, but in a really unique way. So what we've done here is we've taken a full rye Kentucky whiskey, and we've blended that with a Canadian rye, and then we've added port. And
It's very impressive. I can totally get the port.
Yeah,
You get
it's-
the
Oh,
port.
absolutely.
'Cause it's
Yeah,
not-
on the
it's-
very end of
but-
it, especially.
Yeah.
Wine
It's
all
not
day.
port finished. It's got liquid California port in it as a
Wow.
component.
Wow,
So
that's terrific.
A lot more like a cocktail in a bottle than a super straight whiskey.
So we do have to wrap up our portion of the program for Radio Brave. Let me thank everyone for being here. It's been a great week. So much more to come next week. We did run out of time for sampling the Mumford & Sons IPA. We'll try to get to that next week. But in the meantime, thank you guys so much, all of you,
Thanks for
being
having
here.
us.
Thank you.
This has been terrific. We're going to continue this for a few more moments on Facebook Live. But to the rest of you guys, cheers.
Cheers.
Have a
Cheers.
great week. All right, and so on Facebook Live, let me just jump in right away and say, completely different from anything else we've
Yes.
tasted
Yeah,
today.
it's
but terrific.
Like the
what's
cherry bomb. What's the percentage of
yeah.
the cherry?
I don't know the exact percentage. If it falls in line with Alberta rye, we're talking like in the 1-2%
The
range.
Yeah, even at
straw
1%.
rye
Yeah,
flavor.
it's a lot.
Look at that color.
The straw rye flavor plus the port on top.
Yeah.
I would have never guessed. Like that is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Show us the bottle.
So
Where's
it's
the
right
bottle?
here.
back
Yeah.
over
So
there.
Basil, it's a great bottle. Basil
That
Hayden's
is a great.
has in the past. It's always 80 proof,
Right.
and for the bourbon, it kind of comes out a little
Light.
light. Would be the correct word.
Mm-hmm.
This 100%, no BS aside. Even with my love for Frank, there's
Makes
a
up
ton
for
of
it.
flavor for it.
Really does.
ton of
I'll be
flavor
honest
for it.
with you. I brought this dark rye in fully
Specifically?
expecting Chris to hate it.
Yeah.
So
Really?
That's so
yeah, I really
well,
did. I
It
really
almost
did. No.
strikes me as a port
Yeah.
with some whiskey added.
Well,
to it
It's usually the
somehow, you know?
feeling with some that
Well,
you know.
because it has a heavier mouthfeel like
Yeah,
that too. It's very,
exactly.
very
Yeah.
full, oily mouthfeel.
I think so much of drinking whiskey is sort of your mental approach to it. So, Basil Hayden, for example, we've never done a line extension on Basil Hayden. This is a permanent line extension, meaning this is a year-round whiskey for us, which
Nice.
is kind of remarkable in of itself. That said, for us to take that sort of rapid departure from a bourbon and do something like this, I think is pretty unique. But it definitely fulfills sort of this odd niche. Basil Hayden for me, it's not the whiskey I recommend to whiskey connoisseurs necessarily. Although I will say it's my my marathon, not a sprint whiskey.
yeah,
I think
because it is
Basil
that
Hayden's a
80
good
proof.
solid whiskey.
No,
yeah.
it's fine. It's great in cocktails, and it's a very nice when someone says, "Tell me a bourbon I've never had before." You
Yeah.
want to introduce them to it. It's a phenomenal introduction. This, I think, is a great crossover, and I felt
Totally.
the same about Glenfiddich 14 Bourbon
Yeah,
Barrel Reserve.
good parallel. Yeah,
That had someone who's never been into single malts but loves bourbon. Try the Glenfiddich 14.
sure.
This is it's a good whiskey. And,
That's
and
cool.
I hate that you thought I was gonna hate it. I'm a very easy pleaser. Like I'm not a very picky person. I'm not a very judgmental.
Let me
person.
translate. Whiskey and let whiskey.
Right.
Yeah. Beer and let beer.
Yeah.
That's right.
I listen to the podcast.
By the way, you mentioned Glenfiddich. Glenfiddich has, and I sampled this at the Houston Whiskey Social. They have a relatively new product that is aged in IPA casks.
Oh, yeah.
And that whiskey is tremendous. I've been looking for it the last couple of times I've been shopping and haven't found it, but I don't think it's that hard to find.
No, it's not, and it's around the $60 range. We launched
it's terrific.
it for the. I know they did like a lot of times when stuff gets introduced to Houston, they go to the industry first. They'll do it at a bar for people who work at bars. We actually launched it for the public at Federal.
Oh, nice.
I don't pick up a ton of IPA compared to we actually served it alongside a nice Texas-made IPA beer from Texas Beer Refinery.
It was phenomenal.
And we actually we're in talks. I'm glad this is on the Facebook part, not the official part. But we're working on doing Glenfiddich Ice, doing it next. It's a whiskey aged for in ice wine barrels.
Yeah,
I've heard about that.
We're going to pair it with a nice ice wine and see if you can't.
In fact,
some nuances.
So is there a commercially available ice wine?
Is there a
commercially available ice wine?
Yeah, there's. I talked to a rep that's in the group.
Will you explain ice wine?
So, okay, from what little I understand about it, in some higher climates up in the northern area, they're smaller size grapes. They're very specific. They're very concentrated, and so usually what they yield is a very small amount of very intense sweet wine, and
very sweet. Yes,
a white wine.
Yeah.
No, it's not definitely not a red. And it's usually served in half bottles, so you won't see a full-size wine bottle, and they're dessert wines. You drink them after.
Is it called ice wine because the grapes sometimes freeze?
I believe they do.
I think that's right. Yeah.
So I actually never knew the answer to this, so I'm maybe talking. But there's like an Eisenbach, which is tends to be partially frozen. They scrape the water off. I wonder if it's a similar.
Could be. I don't know.
Sure, I'm not sure. That's why
for
I'm
our
hoping.
Purposes, let's say that's what it is.
I am talking to someone in the group that reps a few ice wines. And,
that's cool.
Hoping that we can work something out.
Actually, Glenfiddich Dave has mentioned this as something that is on the horizon.
Yeah. So it should be here in Houston early next month.
Nice.
That's cool. See, I think in general, when we're talking about an IPA cask or the ice wine cask or any of the kind of weirder stuff, you're starting to see, an answer to your question before. Are we saying goodbye to age statements? Yes, to a degree, but I think that's letting us introduce all these really crazy experimental ways of playing whiskey.
Traditional. It's 21 years.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I agree with
but you know what I'm
I
saying,
don't think, as long as you don't completely move away from
of course not.
No age statements, I think there's nothing wrong with introducing something, blending it to a certain flavor profile.
Well, yeah.
The only issue there is the higher price.
The Glenfiddich in the IPA cask I thought was a really unique and delicious product, even though I didn't go, oh yeah, I taste the IPA cask. Like it wasn't that blatant. It was just a different.
But it's also
and
reasonably
it was very
priced.
good. Yeah, and reasonably priced. Yes.
Now the question is, and I didn't do this. Have you tried it next to that IPA, and how did it go with?
We served it at the dinner.
That's right. You said that a minute ago.
We got a keg in and let everyone have at it. But we gave them an IPA beer along with a good ounce and a half of the IPA.
And how well did that match?
It was fine. You do pick up some lighter notes, that pine flavor we're talking about, but it's very subtle in that Scotch. It's single malt profile.
It just adds to the complexity too. Yeah.
It's very...
Because I tried it at the Whiskey Social as well and thought it was beautiful.
Yeah,
it was delicious,
And the XX or the 20 is...
Yes, that was fabulous as well. Yeah. I didn't get a chance to ask you guys during the podcast portion, but how can people find out more about what's next for your organization?
Sign up on our website at HoustonWhiskeySocial.com or go to the Facebook page and sign up there.
We don't necessarily have a newsletter, but we do kind of blast out local events. Anytime something's happening with a brand, we kind of blast it out and kind of let people know so they can find it. A lot of them are free.
And if I'm following you on Facebook, do I get to follow the adventures of Whiskey Pete?
Yes, you can. Well, Whiskey Pete's on Instagram, and so is Gus.
Okay, good.
And if you join the HBS Facebook group, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Kris will personally like every single post you do.
That's right.
That's right.
He is the man like that.
I couldn't get through this.
He is the man like that.
I have to tell you, the HBS one intimidates me a little bit. I'm like, my whiskeys are so plain.
A lot of people...
We just need to hang out more, buddy.
A lot of people feel intimidated, but people are starting to dip their toes in the water. That's usually what happens when you join a group like that. Is a lot of people are quiet for a while, just looking. Then, hey, I bought this because you recommended it, or hey, I bought this because I've seen it a lot in the group. And as long as those people aren't scared off, we're good.
So my pictures of old granddad will be okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Hey, old granddad gets posted more than I think a lot of other bourbons.
Old granddad's great, man.
You mentioned something that
Wild
was
turkey,
amazing.
baby.
You said that you were shy to post things and things like that, but in the groups they have a lot of bottle shares, and those bottle shares is a great way to try something. Right, exactly. Try something you wouldn't normally buy, and then once you try it, you like it, you go buy it, because a lot of times people don't have money to try something.
To try all of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, sure, yeah.
I hosted for a number of years. I hosted a Scotch tasting at my house for a bunch of friends and stuff. And it's the same way. Once you get 14, 15 bottles, you can't go somewhere and for a small amount of money try that many different scotches.
Right.
Even if they're all like the cheapest scotches out there, you can't try it for that much. And everybody loved that because they'd come out and they'd try different ones.
I wish there was a way to track the amount of product being bought by members of the group. It's a weird dynamic. We're not a bar. We're not anything. We're in this nice gray area.
Yeah.
But the group is buying and collecting.
It's an undercurrent of Houston.
Buying and collecting, yeah.
So we
need an app.
Whitmire's barrel in an hour.
You need an app. He said it.
Yeah.
Kind of like what was the beer one that was popular for a
The
while?
HBS.
Tap Finder.
Untapped.
Yeah,
Or
Untapped.
Tapped.
Thank you. Yeah.
We are
Yeah.
we are talking about getting an app going, possibly having brands paid out because it costs to run an app. But
Well, you know my email address.
yeah, I'd like it to be relevant year round, so you can kind of track what you're buying and kind of like, hey, this is what I have in my collection. Spreadsheet.
Have your virtual collection.
Rate it,
Yeah.
I don't. Like
Hold on,
this,
let
I
me
do
pull
like
up
this.
my Tilt app.
Yeah.
There's
You have to take all your pictures this way.
There's an Untapped beer app. There's a few of them.
Yeah. So, guys, I think this would be a good way to wrap up the Facebook portion of this. And thank you, all of you, for being here. This show is like an embarrassment of riches when it comes to information
Here,
about
I'll agree with
whiskey. It makes us feel pretty like we're on it without having to be on it. So it's awesome. But to wrap up, why don't we just each of you guys give me your if somebody's going to buy you a bottle for the holidays, for Christmas, let's say $100 tops. What would you love that to be?
What a great idea! This is a great idea. You should do this. What would I want someone to buy?
Yeah, somebody's going to buy you a bottle. They're not going to spend more than $100. So 100 or less, but they want to get you something you'll love. Where would you send them?
Okay, so I'm going to make 2 recommendations based off what I'm seeing on the walls. In the $60, $70 range, you can't go wrong with something like Forged Oak. They make a Orphan Barrel's 15-year-old bourbon. Is a great. I absolutely love it. Rock Hill Farms is another one that's a little hard to find, but you can find Forged Oak in a lot of places. And lastly, I would say the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. That's another $60 bottle that you just can't go wrong with.
Nice. Ian, what about you?
Oh, he stole the Elijah Craig right out of my mouth, actually.
All right,
I was
that's
say,
fair
but
enough.
I would also say the Hudson 4 grain would be another one that would be so fantastic.
Yeah.
You want to?
For me, on the bourbon side, I would say, let's pick up possibly an Old Forester Prohibition. It's right.
That's
that
one of my favorites
1920
from them.
is
Yeah, the
right in the middle.
1920
It's about
Prohibition.
$60. So that would be one. On the Scotch side, I'd say let's get a Glenfiddich 14, and just
Hard to go wrong.
$45.
Yeah, can't go wrong. And then
Hard to go
I
wrong.
just got 2 bottles for $100.
So
Right.
I'll be equitable here, and I'll give you 2. One is in my portfolio, and one isn't. So in my portfolio, Bowmore 15 is just
Phenomenal.
my favorite pour.
The darkest.
The darkest. Yeah. Just killer. 12 years in bourbon, 3 years in sherry. Can't beat it. And then if I deviate a little bit, I'm really digging Glenfarclas right now.
Ooh,
Nice.
the 105.
Nice.
Yeah.
105, I think, is one of their. Glenfarclas has a very little footprint here in Houston.
Very tiny.
Yeah.
And it is all sherried products and extremely reasonably priced. You can get a 40-year-old whiskey from them for $700.
Yeah.
Now I know that seems like
Wow.
a lot of money, but most 40-year-old whiskeys
Yeah,
go
that's
for
gonna be
thousands and
thousands. Yeah,
thousands of
sure.
dollars.
They're great bargains for what you're
The
getting.
105 is about $70-$80. You can get it specs, and it is 105 British proof, which is 60% our ABV, and it's
Yeah.
just
Wow.
tremendous.
Wow.
Great.
Very nice.
Great. So what's yours?
Well, I have to ask, how much was this? bottle
That's
again?
well. Funny you should ask.
Yes, yes.
Exactly $100 retail.
Okay, so
that was pretty amazing.
So here you go. There's one, and then the other thing that I would say is if you were going to get me something for Christmas and had that kind of a budget to spend, how about 2 bottles of this?
There you go.
Because you could get 2 and still have some change left, and that is absolutely one of my day-to-day favorites. I love this whiskey. So
Cool.
So there's my thoughts. Guys, anything in closing that you want to mention? Plug? We don't have quite the time constraint here. Anything we should be talking about?
Man, thanks for everybody watching on Facebook. That's for sure.
Yeah.
We have a great time every time we're here.
Always
Thanks
a
for
pleasure to
coming
have
out.
you
You
guys.
guys
Yeah,
are tremendous.
Always a pleasure. And I have to say, I appreciate you inspiring my wife because she bought me for my birthday the rolling beverage cart
nice.
that you guys have. That just made me so happy. So thank you very much. I
can
appreciate
return
it.
to thank you. We actually turned our bottle of Blanton straight from the barrel into a soap
Into a soap dispenser. I love it. I love
So
it.
I use
love
old bottles for all my mouthwash. I put a speed pourer on them, and they're mouthwash.
There you go. That's a great idea.
But
I was
sometimes
way
they're
cooler,
on
by
the
the way.
shelf, not in the bathroom.
By the way, I was over at Booze on Westheimer, which they are kind of known for champagne and sparkling wine, and I was in the men's room, and sure enough, they had a bottle of the sparkling wine with a vintage I didn't recognize, but it had the bump on the top, and I was like, well, I'm sure this was a very expensive bottle at some point. So thank you guys so much. We love having you on the show. Let's do it again. I feel like we barely scratched the surface of everything we could have talked about here, so super fun, and thank you Facebook Live, and thanks to Bobby and Adam for keeping all this rolling. So have a great week, my friend, and cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. There's one right there, sir.
Yeah, I was gonna say, hold on.
There you go. There it is. Apparently, I poured an extra.
The only thing
Love.
I mentioned was that barrel proof Jack Daniels.
Bye, Facebook.
Bye-bye.
Oh, yes.
You said